An hour from Adelaide, the capital city of South Australia, on the stunning Fleurieu Peninsula, lies a small holiday town nestled next to the beach, Middleton. Although around 1,300 homes are in the town, just over 400 are occupied permanently, the rest serving as holiday houses. Our story begins in this beautiful town when local residents, who form the Middleton Community Association, voted unanimously to work towards bringing more joy to the town through art. With this shared vision in mind, we shift many kilometres away to the town of Naracoorte in southeastern South Australia. In 2021, a Middleton resident, Jennifer Watts, was staying with her brother Peter and his partner Sharon at their property near Naracoorte. Whenever she visited, Jen spent hours with her border collies, wandering the land, connecting with nature, and marvelling at the height, scale and beauty of the red gum trees scattered throughout the paddocks. In one field, a tree had recently fallen. Its future could easily have ended right there, cut for firewood, cleared away, forgotten. But to this lover of nature and sculpture, its form told a different story. An idea emerged, then quickly escalated in her mind. This fallen tree might become something more. Not firewood, but public art, destined to grace the shores of Middleton. Because in its shape, there was something already deeply connected to this beachside town. A whale. Each winter, the waters off Middleton become part of an ancient journey. Southern right whales travel thousands of kilometres from the cold feeding grounds of the Southern Ocean, moving north toward calmer, warmer seas. They come seeking shelter, protected waters where mothers can give birth, nurse their young and rest. The coastline along Encounter Bay offers exactly that. Its gentle swell, shallow waters and long curved beaches create a natural nursery, one that has drawn whales here for generations. For new calves, these sheltered conditions are essential. Born without a thick layer of blubber, they rely on warmth and their mother's milk to grow strong before the long journey south begins again. Jen presented the idea to the community, who embraced it, to create a sculpture of a southern right whale mother, inspired by the whales that are such an iconic part of the town. To bring this vision to life, the Middleton community reached out to renowned South Australian sculptor Silvio Apponyi, who was happy to make the 4-hour drive to Naracoorte to look at the fallen tree and answer one essential question. Could the form imagined within the wood truly be carved into a piece of art?
So here's the tree. It came down last year in the wind.
So, with any luck, we'll give it a new life.
Oh, can't you just see that as a piece of public art? Everybody loving it for generations. If a tree lasts that long as public art.
Well, red gum's one of the longest lasting timbers, so if it's sound and doesn't have any rot in it, it'll last for a long, long time.
I guess you can't tell that until you get stuck into it, can you?
No. If there is any, it'll be at this end. But it, it sounds.
So when it came down, I was just stomping over the paddock and looked at it and went, that just is a whale to me. It just seems to have that look.
There's a big fat belly there. Baleen that end. Barnacles or callosities. So there's enough width at this fork to carve a tail. That's sort of in proportion, so... Well, it looks as if it's got a lot of fiddleback in it, which is nice.
What's that?
Fiddleback is, how do I explain that? You see that broken bit there?
Yeah.
It appears to do that.
Yep.
Right, that's fiddleback. So the grain goes like this. So when you're playing that flat, you get a lot of light reflection from the wood. That sort of livens it up. It looks really beautiful.
Walking the length of the tree, Silvio assessed its shape and scale from a sculptor's viewpoint, reading the timber, visualising what it could become, seeing the potential within this rough, fallen giant. He confirmed what the community had hoped. The shape of the whale was within the wood, and the sculpture, from his perspective, was achievable.
Can do.
Yes? Woohoo! Well, the next step,
It's definitely going to take 3 weeks, maybe more.
It's perfect though, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Yeah, perfect for a whale, yeah.
You're making faces behind my back.
Would I do such a thing? Oh.
Silvio evaluated the tree's condition while plans began to take shape. What would be required to give this magnificent tree a second life as public art? A vision that would bring people together and transform something fallen into something enduring.
If you cut off the root ball
Cut off the ends, yeah.
and trim this through about here and that one through about there.
So we'll have to get a lumberjack out with a very, very large chainsaw blade and get it cut there so we can transport it, so we don't bring back wood that we're not needing. And then we don't need the root system down there. No, because that, you said that would be the belly. So if we get a chainsaw and
Yeah, was
perhaps
it
if you mark it out for us and
about there.
Silvio marked the limbs to be removed with bright spray paint, mapping out the tree's transformation. Although the project required substantial funding before it could be officially green-lit, one urgent challenge had to be addressed first. The tree stood on land known to flood every decade or so. With winter rains fast approaching, there was only a narrow window to act. To enable it to be safely moved, local woodsmith and skilled chainsaw operator David Williams was engaged to carefully remove the extraneous limbs. Arrangements were then made to lift and relocate it to higher ground, a vital early step made possible through a small seed grant from Alexandrina Council. Haulage firm Gericke Bulk Handling were called in, and after an earlier site visit, it was clear the task would require 2 cranes and a semi-trailer to lift the massive red gum and transport it back to their depot in Naracoorte. It was a clear day in April 2022 when the team arrived on the property. The light was kind, the air still, and for the first time the project felt undeniably real. There was a sense of anticipation, of something long imagined finally beginning to take shape. With great foresight, the Middleton Community Association had decided to film this pivotal moment. The resulting drone footage is both eerie and spectacular, capturing the tree from above as it lay across the paddock, its form already hinting at what it would become. With calm experience, the Gericke team worked methodically, securing heavy ties and preparing the lifts. The cranes then moved in harmony, slowly raising the giant 5.5 metre central section, the piece that would one day become the body of a mother whale. As it left the ground, the scale of the timber became unmistakable. The red gum was immense, dense, ancient, and heavy with time. Its surface bore the scars of age and weather, its grain darkened and hardened by decades of standing, growing, and holding its place in the land. This was not just a fallen tree, but a living archive of seasons past. Suspended in the air, the logs seemed to change character. What had lain quietly in the paddock now hovered with unexpected grace, its weight measured in tons, yet moving slowly and deliberately, guided by thick, strong cables and steady hands. For a moment it was neither tree nor sculpture, but something in between, caught mid-transformation. When it was gently lowered into position and secured on the semi-trailer, there was a collective pause. This was the heart of the work, the mass from which everything else would emerge. The next section was secured and lifted, a smaller log, lighter by comparison, yet no less significant. While the original vision had been to carve a southern right whale mother alone, Silvio saw more when he studied the fallen tree. From one substantial limb, he recognised the potential to shape her calf, transforming the concept into a story of mother and young, so relevant to Middleton. Finally, the great limbs destined to become the mother's sweeping flippers were tucked in alongside. To the uninitiated, it appeared they were moving enormous logs of timber. The whale sculptures themselves existed largely in the shared imagination of Jen and Silvio. The final straps were tightened, and the semi-trailer rolled slowly out of the paddock, carrying not just timber, but hidden within the quiet promise of a mother and her calf. Back in Naracoorte, the red gum pieces would rest in storage for the next 11 months, while behind the scenes, the work continued. In that time, a comprehensive business plan to fund and sculpt the whales had been developed, and numerous grant applications submitted in the journey to bring the vision to life. The site was chosen in an open public field that overlooked Ratalang Basham Beach and Middleton Beach, sitting adjacent to the Encounter Marine Park. The laying of the steel-reinforced concrete footings represented a significant investment, with council engineers determining the precise size and density required to support the immense weight and scale of the sculptures. On Monday the 27th of March 2023, the logs were lifted once more onto a semi-trailer and began the 3.5-hour journey to their new home in Middleton, and a small group gathered, eyes fixed on the road, waiting for the semi to arrive. The semi-trailer reversed onto the flat piece of land beside the prepared concrete footings. The location was close to the Encounter Bikeway, a 31-kilometre on-road and off-road shared-use trail linking the coastal city of Victor Harbour with the historic river port town of Goolwa, passing through the seaside communities of Port Elliot and Middleton along the way. A key tourist drawcard for the region, the intention was that Middleton's whale sculptures would be enjoyed by the many travellers, cyclists and walkers who moved along the path each day. Suspended briefly in midair, the massive red gum sections seemed to hover before being lowered gently and precisely by crane onto the carving site. Silvio watched, then moved slowly around the logs, studying their form and presence. His mind had been working through the possibilities of this project for nearly a year, but this was the first time he had stood before the raw material itself since he first saw the tree lying in a paddock in Naracoorte. As they walked, talked and assessed the timber, photographer Deborah Prestwood approached. She joined a small team who had generously offered their time to document the carving process from beginning to end. Led by Lee Brooks and Richard Pocklington, they captured the stills and vision that would ultimately help bring this story to life. After the tree was placed on Ramangeri country, it was welcomed through a traditional smoking ceremony. Led by Ramangeri man and contemporary artist Cedric Varco, the ceremony acknowledged the land and prepared the red gum to stand in harmony with land, sea and sky. Among the Ramangeri people, part of the wider Nudengeri nation, fire and smoke carry deep spiritual meaning. Smoke is used to cleanse, to protect, and to welcome. Native plants from this country are burned, and the smoke rises, carrying prayers, clearing old energies, and preparing a space for what is to come. This was more than a symbolic act. It was a way of introducing the tree to country properly, acknowledging the ancestors, the spirits of the land, and the dreaming story of Condolly the whale that belongs to this place. The waters forming the backdrop to Middleton's sculptures belong to the whales. For thousands of years they have come here. These sheltered bays along the Fleurieu Peninsula are a nursery, calm, protected, and rich with life. There are no predators here, no threats, just shallow water, steady rhythm, and space to rest. But it hasn't always been this way. In the early days of colonisation, these same waters became a centre for whaling. Southern right whales were hunted in large numbers, their slow movement and close approach to shore making them easy targets. The impact was devastating. Within a few decades, the whales were gone. For more than a century, they did not return to these shores. The knowledge of this place, passed from mother to calf, was broken, and the coastline fell silent. But slowly, over time, something remarkable began to happen. Protected from hunting, the population began to recover, and with each passing generation, the whales started to return. Not all at once, but one by one. Relearning old pathways, rediscovering safe waters, and reclaiming this coastline as their own. It had been decided to model Middleton's whale sculptures on two very real whales, a female southern right whale known as Buttons, who visited these waters in 2013, 2017, and again in 2022, returning each time to give birth. Her most recent calf, a male born in the 2022 season, was named Bobby. Beautiful video and still images of Buttons and Bobby were provided to Silvio, guiding the form and detail of his sculptures. Silvio's first cut into the red gum log carried a quiet sense of ceremony. It was only a nick, a light removal of bark at the edge, made with one of his sharp, trusted chainsaws. Yet in that moment, the transformation had begun. For more than 40 years, Silvio has refined his craft, from entirely abstract forms to works defined by remarkable detail and realism. His greatest inspiration is Australian fauna, and through his work he seeks to draw attention to these unique and often endangered species. Colleagues, highly skilled in their own right, and holding the sculptor in deep respect, stepped forward to help to create a perfectly flat base for the sculpture. Using a slabbing machine mounted across the log, they worked methodically, shaving back the red gum in long, controlled passes. For those watching who thought it would take days for the shape to emerge, they were mistaken. On the very first morning of carving, Silvio stepped up to the red gum with his chainsaws and without hesitation began making sweeping, precise cuts. No uncertainty, only intent. Within just a short time, and to the quiet amazement of those gathered, the unmistakable form of a whale began to reveal itself. What had been a solid, fallen trunk was already beginning to carry life and movement. By the second day, there was a tail, defined, powerful, rising against the brilliant backdrop of the ocean, a magnificent office for both sculptor and audience. The setting only added to the sense that something extraordinary was unfolding. Each movement deliberate, each cut confident, guided by years of experience and a clear vision already formed in his mind. With chainsaws and planers working in rhythm, the sculpture quickly reached the point where it needed to be turned, and once again the crane was called in. A number of key costs were built into the original business plan and grant applications. one of the most significant driven by the sheer size and scale of the red gum tree itself. It was simply too large, too heavy to be moved by hand. Turning the sculpture required machinery, and specifically a crane. Each time the sculpture needed to be repositioned, it was a considerable operation. It was just one example of the many logistical challenges behind the project, necessary costs that quickly accumulated as the vision took shape. Thankfully, there was also a dedicated team of volunteers from the Middleton Community Association, always ready to step in and help at a moment's notice. Their energy and willingness became an essential part of the process, filling the gaps where machinery and manpower met. At this point, the majority of the budget had been secured through grants and philanthropic donations, but more was still needed. Pressing the go button without full funding in place had been a calculated risk, one taken with faith in the strength of the community, and that faith was rewarded. As Silvio carved through the red gum, slices of timber began to fall away. It sparked a simple but effective idea. The offcuts could be sold. In reality, it became a way for people to contribute, a $10 donation exchanged for a small piece of the story. Art comes at a price, and to reach the final target, innovation and community spirit played their part. In addition to significant support through grants from Alexandrina Council, the Australian Government, Regional Arts Australia and Country Arts SA, the remaining funds were raised in creative and heartfelt ways. A week into the project, Silvio was still working with intensity. The energy of a man in his 7th decade was extraordinary, and by now the form was unmistakable. The whale looked like a whale. The project then paused for several weeks, and when Silvio returned, something else had shifted. Full funding had finally been secured through corporate sponsorship, red gum offcuts sold, a collection box steadily filling with small donations, and generous contributions from across the community. Some gave $10, others more. And then there were quiet and beautiful moments, like the neighbour who dropped by, admired the project, asked quietly how fundraising was going, and handed over $1,000. It was in every sense a collective effort, the community shaping the outcome just as surely as the sculptor shaped the wood. Friends joined along the way, people like Jim, a quiet achiever, who simply stepped in and got to work with the sander, working steadily, almost meditatively. There was something cathartic in the repetition, each pass softening the timber, each movement bringing the whale closer to the surface. But that finish did not come easily. It required hours and hours of sanding, slow, methodical work. By Wednesday, the 3rd of May, the crane was needed once again to turn the great form of the mother whale. And this time there was no longer any doubt. We could see it clearly, the shape, the movement, the intention. She was unmistakably a whale, and more than that, she was stunning. The lift of her tail, already elegant, already full of motion, was something special. It had to be sanded while suspended in the air, allowing access to every curve and surface that couldn't be reached from the ground. As Buttons was gently held in the crane's straps, it was as though she had come alive, suspended above the earth, weightless for a moment. Volunteer Jim continued sanding while Silvio carved, the two working in quiet rhythm. The surface of the red gum began to take on a softness, a quiet sheen. reflecting in its own way the imagined skin of a whale. There was a beauty in it that seemed almost improbable, that something so solid, so ancient, could become something so fluid. Rarely did an hour pass without someone stopping to watch. People came on morning walks, on afternoon drives, on purpose and sometimes just by chance. They lingered, they asked questions, they stood quietly taking it in. Like a choreographer directing a performance, Silvio guided the crane operator this way, then that, adjusting the angle, the height, the position, ensuring every part of the wood that he needed to carve or to sand could be reached. Buttons would be lowered carefully onto the sleeper base, the straps then loosened and repositioned before she was lifted once more into the air. Again and again the process repeated, controlled, deliberate, almost graceful in its execution. At one point, she seemed to have a mind of her own and twisted through the air like she was twirling through the water. And as the sun began to drop toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the site, the crane lifted her one final time for the day, gently returning her to rest, elevated just above the grass. The carving process had become something of a spectacle. At the same time as Silvio refined the form of buttons, work had already begun on her calf, Bobby. Smaller, lighter, but no less important. And while Bobby didn't carry the same weight as his mother, the crane was still needed to help lift and position him into place. As with the larger sculpture, the transformation was swift. Under Silvio's hands, the raw log began to take shape, curves softening, lines emerging, character forming. It didn't take long before the essence of the calf was unmistakable. There was already a sense of connection between the two forms, mother and calf, side by side. The positioning and sculpting of the calf, with its tail flicked upwards, was playful and joyous. Silvio worked to strengthen areas that might be vulnerable over time, cutting into the timber and inserting strong slithers of wood, glued and secured, reinforcing the structure from within. It was a quiet kind of craftsmanship, not always visible, but essential, because this sculpture was not just for now, it was for years to come. But even as the sculpture neared completion, there was an understanding that the work would never truly be finished, because red gum is a living material. It breathes, it moves, it expands and contracts with the seasons, responding to heat, cold, wind, and rain. Silvio knew this well. Finally, it was time for Buttons and Bobby to be fixed into place, anchored to the concrete footings, as if moored to this coastline for decades to come. There was quiet curiosity among those watching. How exactly would Silvio align timber and concrete with such precision? How would the strong 600mm stainless steel pins be set perfectly into both, ensuring the sculptures would stand firm for years ahead? But as with every stage of the process, what seemed complex quickly became effortless in Silvio's hands. With calm assurance, he marked 2 simple points on the base of Buttons, just dots, placed with an instinct born of experience. A plywood guide was fixed in place, and as the crane held her suspended in midair, Silvio took up a large auger and began to drill. The machine bit cleanly into the red gum, sending out long curls of richly coloured timber, ribbons of the tree's history twirling onto the ground below. That same timber template, now precisely aligned, was then placed onto the concrete footings below. Using it as a guide, corresponding holes were drilled into the cement, each one needing to match exactly. The stainless steel rods were secured into place, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Buttons was lowered. Millimetre by millimetre, she descended toward her final position. Silvio remained calm, while around him others held their breath. Cameras were raised, eyes fixed. Would it line up? With the master in control, there was never really any doubt. And then she settled, perfectly. The same process was repeated for Bobby, and by the end of the day, mother and calf nestled side by side, finally at rest, never to move again. Spontaneous applause broke out among those gathered, a shared moment of relief, admiration, and quiet wonder. They had witnessed something special, not just the placing of a sculpture, but the culmination of vision, skill, and community, brought together in a single precise moment. Finally, no whale would be complete without her flippers, the last elements to be shaped and fitted. As Silvio and Jim manoeuvred them into place, lifting and adjusting, the sculpture reached its final form. While Jim continued sanding Bobby, Silvio turned his attention to one of the most distinctive features of the whale, the callosities. These are the rough, raised patches found on a whale's head, patterns of hardened skin, often home to small colonies of marine life that appear as pale markings against the dark body. No two whales share the same arrangement. They are unique to each individual, like a fingerprint. Silvio carved these features into buttons, translating something organic and irregular into timber. These callosities would not be white as they appear in nature, but they would still be unmistakable, a defining detail that tied the sculpture directly to the real whale that inspired it. And then came a quieter, more intimate moment. Jen was given the honour of applying the first coat of linseed oil. brushing it gently across the surface of Buttons and Bobby. As the oil soaked into the timber, something extraordinary happened. The colour deepened, the grain came alive. The rich reds of the red gum, hidden beneath bark, dust and carving, revealed themselves in full. Each stroke of the brush seemed to awaken the wood, bringing warmth, depth, and a final sense of completion. In that moment, the vision was realised. Not only had these magnificent whales been created on time and within budget, they had far exceeded expectations. And along the way, Middleton had gained something more, a lasting friendship with a man of extraordinary talent, gregarious, intuitive, and quietly brilliant, Silvio Apponyi.